I used to think you could pinpoint the moment everything changed, like a car crash, sudden and loud. But the truth is, sometimes things shift quietly, slowly, with a smile, a shrug, a look that lasts a little too long. The night of the corporate reception in Seattle was one of those moments. It didn't scream betrayal, not at first. It whispered. Mia looked like she'd been dropped into that hotel ballroom from another world. I mean that in every way, her dress, her body language, even her laugh. Like she was glowing from something I hadn't been part of. It was a sleek emerald gown, the kind with thin straps and a slit up the side. Nothing too revealing, just enough to make heads turn. I remember thinking she looked stunning. I also remember the first crack in my chest forming when I noticed that one of the straps had slipped halfway off her shoulder, and she hadn't bothered to fix it. She stood near the open bar, laughing at something a colleague said. I was on the other side of the room, watching her like you'd watch a stranger you swore you used to know. It wasn't just her appearance. It was the way she moved, like the air belonged to her, like the room was hers, and I was a guest in it. When I finally walked over, I almost felt like I was interrupting something. The guy she was talking to, tall, silver tie, familiar face. I'd seen him around her office before. Daniel, her boss, or maybe regional manager. Hard to keep track of titles. He was leaning just a little too close, saying something low and funny that made her toss her head back and touch his arm. A gentle, familiar touch. Too familiar. Mia, I said, placing my hand on the small of her back. She turned around, smiling, eyes a little too wide like I'd startled her. Hey, babe, this place is insane, right? She said quickly, turning her body just slightly between me and Daniel. They went all out. Her lipstick was smeared on one corner of her mouth. Not dramatically, but not in a way she'd usually let slide. And her hair, messy in a way that looked like it was meant to be styled, except it wasn't how she'd left the house. It looked like someone had raked their fingers through it. I glanced at her glass, then frowned. Did you switch drinks? She looked down at it. Oh no, this isn't mine. Someone gave it to me while I was looking for you. I must have grabbed the wrong one. She set it down and laughed, brushing it off like she always did when something didn't line up. I was about to let it go, chalk it up to her being tipsy and social, but then I saw it. Right near her foot, half hidden under the linen of the tablecloth. A hotel key card. Not from the Fairmont where we were staying. The logo was different. Black with a silver swoop and the name Arden Suites, stamped in metallic font. I bent down and picked it up, turning it between my fingers. I looked at her. Not ours. She glanced down, then smiled like I was being ridiculous. Oh yeah, no. Must have fallen out of someone's pocket. Daniel was just here. Maybe it's his? Daniel was gone. I hadn't even seen him leave. She reached for the card, took it casually, and dropped it into her purse without missing a beat. Then she looped her arm through mine and said, "Let's go find food. I'm starving." Just like that, the conversation moved. She was always good at steering, deflecting, softening things. Usually I went along. But this time, I don't know. Something stuck. We wandered toward the catered tables, and I found myself walking half a step behind her. Watching. Her heels clicked a little unevenly on the marble, like she was distracted. I scanned the room. No sign of Daniel. No sign of anything really. Just suits, soft music, champagne flutes, the usual white linen lies that come with corporate parties. She chatted with a woman from marketing while I poured myself sparkling water. I nodded along, pretended to listen, but my mind was somewhere else, fixated. When had things started feeling off? I couldn't point to a single fight, no screaming match or slammed doors. Just a slow distancing. We still had dinner together, still laughed at movies, still had our little rituals, Friday Thai takeout, walking the lake on Sundays. But something had changed. I felt it in the quiet moments. The way she used her phone now, how she angled the screen, how she smiled like she had a secret. I watched her now, sipping wine, nodding at the conversation but not really there. Like her mind was half a room away. Like she was waiting for someone, or remembering something. Later in the evening, we stepped outside for air. The rooftop was mostly empty, just a few stragglers puffing on cigars and checking their phones. She stood by the railing, looking out at the skyline, the city lights reflecting off her bare shoulder. The strap of her dress still hadn't been fixed. I stepped behind her and gently lifted it back into place. She looked over her shoulder and smiled like I'd brushed an eyelash off her cheek. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah. Just tired," she said, turning back toward the city. "These things drag on, don't they?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I agreed with. My hand lingered on her back for a moment. I wanted to pull her closer, but I didn't. Something had shifted between us. Something I couldn't name. On the way back to our room, she was chatty. Told me stories about coworkers. Joked about the DJ's terrible music. Teased me for my face in the corner stance during most of the party. I laughed along. But underneath, I was somewhere else. Stuck on that key card in her purse. The dress strap. The lipstick. When we got into bed that night, she curled up next to me like always. Laid her head on my chest and said, "You were quiet tonight." "Just tired," I said, echoing her earlier words. She hummed in agreement, and soon her breathing slowed. She fell asleep like nothing had happened, like nothing was different. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Could have all been coincidence. A clumsy spill, a misplaced key, a smudge from a napkin or a glass. But that's the thing about suspicion, it doesn't need proof to grow. It just needs space. And that night, it found it. And I couldn't shake the feeling that while I had been trying to find her in the crowd, she'd already left the room, just in ways I hadn't realized yet. After Seattle, things didn't go back to normal. Or maybe they did, but not the normal I remembered. There was a new rhythm in our home, familiar enough to seem harmless, but altered, like a song you've heard 1,000 times suddenly played in a different key. It made you pause, tilt your head, ask yourself if something was wrong, or if you were just imagining it. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid, that the key card at the party was just bad luck, that Daniel's hand across Mia's back had lingered because he was drunk, that she hadn't fixed her strap because, honestly, it's just a strap. I told myself those things the way people repeat affirmations, desperately over and over, hoping they'll stick. But they didn't. Not when more things started piling up. A week later, she set a password on her phone. No conversation, no explanation. Just one day, I glanced over, and her screen read Face ID required. When I asked about it casually, she smiled and said something about work security protocols. "IT's making us do it," she added, like it was no big deal. And maybe it wasn't. But Mia had never locked me out before. Not like that. I started noticing how often she turned her screen away when she typed. A quick glance to check if I was watching, then a subtle tilt. Nothing dramatic, just careful, deliberate. Then came the late meetings. She'd always been diligent about time. If she was running behind, I'd get a heads up, maybe a picture of her dinner plate at some boring networking event. But after Seattle, she started coming home later and later, often without a text. When I asked, she shrugged it off. Quarter-end madness, new client onboarding, last-minute deck revisions. They all sounded plausible, but they all felt hollow. Once, she came in just past 9 p.m. I was on the couch, flipping channels without watching anything, and she walked through the door with this soft, distracted smile. Eyes a little unfocused, cheeks a little flushed. She kissed my cheek like she was checking a box. "You eat?" I asked, eyeing the takeout I'd left for her on the stove. "Grabbed something with the team," she replied, kicking off her heels. "Anyone I know?" She paused just a beat too long. "Just the usual crew." The air between us stayed still, like a held breath. Then she laughed and waved her hand. "God, you're looking at me like I committed a crime." I wasn't. Not yet. But something inside me was already shifting. A few nights after that, she came home with a scent I didn't recognize. A new perfume, bold, floral, not her usual subtle citrus. I complimented it, curious. She smiled and said, "Gift from a client. You like it?" I nodded. "It's different." She wore that scent 3 more times in the next week. I started watching her more closely, not in an obsessive way, just aware, alert. The way she hesitated before answering simple questions. The way she suddenly suggested separate calendars for work and home stuff. "So I don't clog your feed," she claimed. Then there was the moment I couldn't forget, no matter how many times I tried. I kept going back to the reception, to Daniel's hand, sliding across the small of her back. I hadn't wanted to react then. I told myself it was professional, a mistake. But the way she smirked, subtle, confident, like it didn't bother her, kept playing in my mind. Not surprised, not uncomfortable, like she expected it. I checked her company's LinkedIn page a few days later, something I'd never done before. Just curiosity, I told myself. Innocent interest. Daniel had been promoted recently VP of Strategy. Mia was on his team, the same team that had late meetings. Once, I made an excuse to stop by her office during lunch. I brought sandwiches. I thought maybe I'd surprise her. I'd done it before. But this time, when I walked in, the receptionist looked confused. "She's out," she said. "Took an early lunch today. Alone?" I asked before I could stop myself. The receptionist hesitated, then smiled, polite and corporate. "Not sure. I drove around the area for a few minutes, ridiculous as it sounds. I didn't see her." Eventually, I tossed the sandwiches in the back seat and drove home, stomach twisting. That night, I didn't mention the visit, and she didn't mention any lunch. The silence between us felt mutual, like we both knew something, but neither wanted to say it out loud. What really solidified my suspicion was how much she started overcompensating. Out of nowhere, she became affectionate. Like old Mia, but too much. She laughed louder, complimented me more often, sent me random "I love you" texts during the day. Felt like a performance, like someone checking all the right boxes to keep the curtain from slipping. And I played along, smiled, said, "I love you too." But the truth was already unraveling inside me. One night, as I lay awake, I stared at the ceiling and tried to trace when I stopped trusting her. Not just doubting, but truly, fully lost the thread. It wasn't a single moment. It was a dozen little ones stitched together into something I couldn't ignore anymore. The lipstick at the party, the keycard, the laugh with Daniel, the password on her phone, the team dinners, the new perfume. Small things. Alone, they were nothing. Together, they were loud. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted that. I wanted to believe I was seeing shadows where there were none, that I was letting my imagination run wild. But my instincts weren't shouting anymore. They were whispering. And somehow that felt worse. Quiet dread was harder to shake. I started keeping track. Not in a spreadsheet or anything dramatic. Just mental notes. Dates, times, how long she was gone, what she wore, how she looked when she came home. I was watching the space between who she used to be and who she was becoming. And it kept growing. She once slipped up, called me by a pet name we hadn't used in years. "Honey," she said softly one night, placing her hand on my shoulder. We'd long since stopped using pet names. Something about the way she said it made me feel like she'd meant it for someone else. Another night, I reached over for her while we were in bed. She flinched, not dramatically, but just enough that I noticed. Then she turned and curled into me, whispering, "Sorry, I'm just tired." So was I. I was tired of guessing, tired of second-guessing myself, tired of pretending everything was fine while watching the cracks spread like hairline fractures in glass. One night, as I brushed my teeth, I looked at her reflection in the mirror beside mine. She was applying moisturizer, humming softly to herself. She looked peaceful, composed, and I realized something that made my stomach turn. I didn't recognize her anymore. Same face, same voice, but something had shifted behind the eyes. Something I hadn't put there. Something I wasn't part of. The distance wasn't just in my head. It was in the way she kissed me goodnight without meeting my eyes. The way her laughter sounded hollow when I made a joke. The way she always said tomorrow when I asked if she wanted to do something together. The woman I fell in love with used to share everything with me. Now, she shared just enough to keep suspicion at bay, but never too much. Just enough to keep the performance going. I didn't have proof yet, but I had the feeling. And when you know. And that scared me more than anything else. Because I could feel the truth circling just out of sight, like a storm waiting offshore. And I was already starting to build a shelter. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic evening. Not a candlelit dinner or some explosive fight. It was just a Tuesday. Cloudy, quiet, forgettable. The kind of day where everything feels still on the surface, but underneath, things are shifting, breaking. I was working from home, half listening to a budget call, when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the front porch camera. Normally, I wouldn't check it. Half the time it was delivery drivers or kids cutting across the lawn. But I clicked it without thinking. I wish I could say I had a sixth sense, that I felt something in my chest or had a voice whisper in my ear. But no, it was just habit, curiosity. And then there it was. The video opened with a silver sedan pulling up to the curb in front of our house. Not a car I recognized. Not a rideshare either. It didn't have any stickers or indicators. Just a clean, polished, mid-size sedan. Expensive but not flashy. The driver's window rolled down. Mia got out from the passenger side. She lingered by the door, leaned down, and said something to the driver I couldn't hear. And then, God. She leaned further in, smiled, and kissed him. Not a peck. Not a friendly goodbye. A kiss. Full. Familiar. Slow. I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen, unable to move. I watched it loop again. She kissed him. Not once, but twice. Then she brushed her hand against his cheek, squeezed his hand through the window, and stepped away. He drove off. She walked up the driveway like it was any other day, keys in hand, phone tucked under her arm. I didn't even remember ending the work call. Just silence. I stared at the video, blinking like maybe the next time I watched it, it would be different. That maybe it wasn't her. That maybe it was a strange coincidence. A friend. A cousin. Something. But it was her. Mia in the same blazer she left in that morning. Mia, with her hair pulled back in the tight bun she always wore on important days. Mia, with that laugh in her eyes I hadn't seen around me in months. I should have felt rage. Or heartbreak. But what I felt, first and foremost, was relief. It was real. It wasn't in my head. The gaslight flickered out and the room lit up in cold, clean clarity. All the little signs I'd been collecting weren't paranoia. They were clues. And now I had the final one. Direct proof. She came in the door like nothing had happened. I heard the sound of her heels, the way she set her keys gently in the tray, dropped her bag with a soft sigh. "Hey!" she called from the entryway. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." I didn't respond. My phone was in my hand, still showing the paused frame, her mouth pressed to his. I thumbed the screen off and slipped it into my pocket as she walked into the kitchen. Still talking. "You wouldn't believe the day I had. That team I told you about? They still don't have their numbers right, and Daniel." She stopped when she saw me standing there, staring at her like she was a stranger. Her smile faltered. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. Long day." She nodded back, slowly. "Want dinner?" I was thinking maybe we could just do something light. "I'm not really hungry." I told her I'd order something later. She said she was going to take a shower. I watched her disappear down the hall, her voice trailing behind her. I stood in the middle of the kitchen for a long time, listening to the water run, the same way I imagined she washed the scent of someone else off her skin. I didn't follow. I didn't confront her. Not yet, because in that moment, something shifted in me. I stopped hoping it wasn't true. I started preparing for what came next. The rest of the night passed like a performance. She came out of the shower, wrapped in a robe, hair damp, cheeks flushed. She kissed me on the cheek and curled up on the couch next to me while I pretended to scroll my phone. She laughed at something on her screen and showed it to me. A video of a dog jumping into a pile of leaves. I laughed too. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt easier than silence. And all the while, that video burned in my pocket. When she fell asleep next to me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder like nothing was broken, I stared at the dark TV screen and let the weight of it sink in. There was no going back. The next morning, she made coffee like usual, packed a container of fruit and left her mug half full on the counter, like she always did. "Running late," she said, blowing a kiss on her way out. I watched her car pull out of the driveway. My phone buzzed as the door shut behind her. Front door camera. Movement detected. I played the clip again. The kiss. The silver sedan. Her smile. I copied the footage and saved it in 3 places, one on the cloud, one on a flash drive, and one on an external hard drive. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I wasn't about to risk losing it. I spent the rest of that day numb, drifting through work tasks while the footage played in the back of my head on a loop. Kiss. Smile. Walk away. By noon, I'd already watched it a dozen times. Each time, the shock dulled. What replaced it wasn't anger, at least not the kind that explodes. It was colder. Methodical. I ordered a second flash drive. Bought a password-protected folder app for my phone. I called a lawyer, not to file anything, not yet, but to ask general questions. To explore options. He asked if I had evidence. I said, yes, I do. That night, Mia came home late again. Sorry, she said. Got stuck with Daniel going over the contract. You know how he is. I nodded. She looked tired. Or maybe she just looked distant. Either way, I stopped trying to read her. I already knew more than she thought. She started talking about taking a trip. Just the 2 of us, she said, laying her head on my lap while we sat on the couch. I feel like we need it. I know I've been kind of scattered lately. Yeah, I said. That could be nice. She smiled, kissed my hand. I think she believed me. Later, after she'd gone to bed, I stayed up and opened a blank note on my laptop. Evidence log. Front porch camera, kiss with unknown male, Tuesday, 6:38 p.m. Unknown vehicle, silver sedan, no plate visible. No prior notice of delay, claim traffic. Normal behavior after, no sign of conflict. I added timestamps, observations. I started building my own timeline, not just of that day, but the weeks before. Late nights. Changed passwords. New perfume. Closed calendar invites. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was documenting. She was building a double life. I was building a case. The next morning, I watched her get ready through the bathroom mirror. She hummed to herself as she tied her hair up, tried on 2 different earrings before deciding. She caught me looking and smiled. What? She asked. Nothing, I said. You look nice. Big day. Client meeting in Portland, she said. Might be a late one. Okay, I replied. Be safe. She kissed me, tasted like mint and grapefruit. She wore the new perfume again. Then she was gone. I stood there in the bathroom, the scent of her hanging in the air. I didn't know if she was lying about Portland. I didn't need to. I had what I needed now. The proof. And more than that, clarity. Once you see the truth, it becomes impossible to unsee it. Like ink in water, spreading, staining everything it touches. After the kiss at the curb, after the camera caught what her mouth denied, I stopped asking questions. There was nothing more to ask. She'd made her choices. My only job now was to pay attention. And I did. I watched my wife with the quiet of a man who'd already died inside. Not dramatically. Not the kind of death that makes you fall to your knees. No, this was slower. The kind of dying that happens when your home stops feeling like home, and your partner starts to look like a stranger wearing someone you used to love. She still made coffee in the mornings. Still asked if I wanted oat milk or regular. Still texted me from work about the neighbor's cat, or the funny thing her coworker said, or what movie we should watch on Friday. On the surface, everything looked intact. But I could see it now. The rehearsed warmth, the careful timing, the way she'd make sure to send a check-in text just when I might start to wonder. But I didn't wonder anymore. I documented. The first thing I noticed was how she started using cash. Not large withdrawals, nothing that would raise a red flag by itself. But enough. ATM receipts tucked into the trash can. Crumpled 10s and 20s folded neatly into the inside zipper pocket of her purse. Mia hadn't carried cash since we got married. Everything was digital. Traceable. I checked our bank activity. Every week or so, she'd pull $100 or $120 from an ATM near her office. No pattern to the days. No matching receipts for groceries or gas. Just quiet, clean withdrawals. I started marking them on a private spreadsheet. Dates, times, amounts. I stopped feeling guilty about it. She had her secrets. Now I had mine. Her work calendar changed too. She'd always let me see it. "You know how scatterbrained I am," she used to joke. But now, half of her meetings were marked private or location TBD. I asked once, playing dumb. "Security stuff," she said, not even looking up from her laptop. "New policy for client meetings." A week later, I borrowed her work tablet under the pretense of printing something. The calendar app opened automatically. Most of the private meetings were during lunch hours, sometimes right after work. None of them had meeting links. No phone numbers. Just blank entries with vague titles like follow up or check-in. Nothing was scheduled after 6 p.m. Those nights, she came home with perfect stories and perfect timing. Always tired, always busy. Always early to the shower. That became another pattern. Mia started heading straight to the bathroom as soon as she got home. Keys down. Bag hung. Shoes off. Straight to the shower. She didn't used to do that. She used to linger, talk to me about her day, kick off her shoes and pull her hair down. Now she walked in like she was on fire, like the only thing that mattered was washing the day off, or someone else's scent. I began noting how long she stayed in the shower. 20 minutes. 30. Once, 42. I timed it not because I needed a number, but because I needed to feel in control of something. When the water stopped, I'd hear the quiet creak of the vanity drawer. The one where she kept the new perfume, the travel-sized dry shampoo, the mini hairspray bottle that hadn't been there a month ago. It was like watching a ghost put on skin. Even her affection changed. She touched me like she was playing a role, like she was remembering the motions, not feeling them. The timing was always perfect. When I looked too serious, she'd lean over and kiss my shoulder. When I stayed quiet at dinner, she'd slide her hand across the table and ask, "You okay?" Eyes wide, smile soft, scripted. And I played my role too. I smiled, kissed back, laughed at her stories. I didn't accuse. I didn't question. I didn't give her a reason to close off more than she already had. Because I needed access. One Thursday, she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she answered a call in the backyard. I wasn't trying to snoop. I didn't need to. The screen was right there, her Outlook inbox glowing with unread messages. Most were work-related. But one thread caught my eye. Reservation confirmed. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. I clicked. The email was from a place I didn't recognize. Some modern bistro in Portland. The reservation was for 2, under Brian Taylor. I scrolled down. Another message from a few weeks ago confirmed a stay at the Lodgeview Hotel, just 6 blocks from the restaurant. We live in Seattle. She'd never mentioned a trip to Portland. Not for work. Not for anything. Brian. The name stuck. It wasn't Daniel, the boss I'd suspected. It wasn't some random friend. It was someone else entirely. Another character in her story. Another layer of the lie. That night, she told me she had to travel on Saturday for a last-minute team retreat. "It's just overnight," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Daniel's team wants us to reset after the quarter close." I nodded. "Sounds smart." She smiled. "I'll bring you something back. Maybe that sea salt caramel you like?" I kissed her forehead and said, "I'll miss you." She looked touched. Genuinely. Or maybe she was just impressed I hadn't caught on. But I had. I already knew about Brian. About the bistro. About the hotel. And now I knew this wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a mistake. This was a system. A whole structure of lies, maintained with discipline and precision. Mia wasn't just hiding something. She was living something else. Entire days of her life. People, places, moments I wasn't part of. That weekend, I didn't confront her. Instead, I tracked her location using the phone's Find My setting. She hadn't turned it off. Maybe she didn't know I still had access. Maybe she thought I wouldn't check. At 7:26 p.m. Her dots settled at the bistro's address in downtown Portland. At 10:11 p.m. it moved 6 blocks north. At 10:23 p.m. it stopped moving for the rest of the night. I took a *T, not because I needed more proof, but because I needed to remember the feeling of finally knowing. Of all the questions collapsing into one answer. She was with him. I didn't call her, didn't text. I didn't rage or spiral. I turned off the lights, made myself a drink, and sat by the window in silence. It was the strangest feeling, not sadness, not yet, just space. Empty, unfamiliar space where something used to be. She came home Sunday evening, suitcase in one hand, plastic bag in the other. "Look," she said, smiling. "Salt caramels." I took them, said thank you. She hugged me, told me the retreat was productive, that Daniel had made them all do some dumb trust-building exercise. "You would have hated it," she said, laughing. I kissed her on the cheek and said, "You know me so well." She didn't hear the irony. That night, while she showered again right away, I opened her suitcase. Tucked beneath her clothes was a receipt. Room 412. 2 guests. 1 king bed. I took a photo, then zipped it back up. She came out of the shower in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel, smelling like the perfume I now hated. "Movie?" she asked, settling in next to me. I nodded. "You pick." She smiled, leaned her head on my shoulder, and scrolled through the options. She didn't notice my hand resting on my phone, or the quiet calculation in my expression. She thought we were watching a movie. I was watching her. There's a moment when your heart stops trying to bargain with reality. No more, maybe it's not what it looks like. No more rewriting the story to make yourself the hero who just misunderstood. That moment came for me on a Tuesday night, sitting alone in the den, staring at her laptop. It was unlocked. Mia was out for a team dinner. I already knew she wasn't with the team. I knew she wasn't eating overpriced appetizers while making small talk with coworkers. Her location showed her just outside the city, near a boutique hotel with good reviews and bad lighting. I didn't need to follow her this time. I already knew the routine, but I hadn't touched her laptop until then. Not because I couldn't. I'd always known the password. She never changed it. That was her pattern. She secured the things she thought I might question, like her phone. But the laptop? That was her work machine, her territory. I think she thought I'd never go there. And for a while I hadn't. But that night I did. There was a folder on her desktop labeled Q4_client_dev. Typical, boring, corporate. But when I clicked it open, it didn't hold spreadsheets or pitch decks. It held photos, dozens of them. Her, with him. Not just *TS. Not just one-offs. These weren't blurry, rushed selfies taken in some hotel hallway. These were polished, intentional. Smiles framed in golden hour light. Breakfast trays with croissants and fresh berries on hotel beds. Poolside feet touching under striped towels. Their bodies close. Their faces soft. The kind of closeness that only comes when something isn't new anymore. When it's comfortable. Established. It wasn't a fling. It was a second life. There were photos from Portland. From Vancouver. From a wine tasting in Walla Walla. The same weekend she told me her mom was visiting. I remember offering to drive her down, and she said, "No, I need that time alone." She wasn't alone. She was with Brian. His name was in the metadata of several files, camera details embedded in the JPGs. Bryant_camera_002. Bryant_trip3. She hadn't even bothered to strip the data. Maybe she thought no one would ever look. I did. I opened another folder, titled Notes. Inside were *TS of messages. Google Docs of copied conversations. Plans. Not just romantic crap, though that was there too. "I miss your breath on my neck. When we're together, the world shuts up." That kind of thing. But there were also logistics. So many logistics. A parking code for a garage downtown. A running list of hotels they'd already used. crossed out to avoid repeats. Alternate names for contact info. She had him saved as BT. Graphics in her phone. And then there were the messages about me. Not many, but enough. He's still suspicious, trying not to act weird. He doesn't ask much. It's easier than I thought. Might do that trip in March. Told him it's a leadership retreat. I stopped reading after that. I sat back, staring at the screen, letting the weight of it press down like cement. I hadn't cried. Not once through any of this. But I felt something then. Not tears. Not rage. Just exhaustion. I had the evidence now. Every photo, every message, every receipt. Every lie she'd stitched into our life was now laid bare, time-stamped and foldered. Copied it all. Onto a drive. Onto a cloud folder. Onto a private server. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't plotting to blow up her life. But I needed security. I needed a record. For the lawyer. For myself. For the version of me that kept asking, "Are you sure?" Yeah. I was sure now. When Mia came home that night, she smelled like vanilla and gin. She kicked off her shoes in the foyer and walked in humming some soft melody, the way she always did when she felt light. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop closed and my face blank. "Hey babe," she said. "Sorry it ran late. You wouldn't believe how long Sarah went on about her kids' science fair." I smiled. "I believe it," I said. "You hungry?" She blinked. "No, we ate, but thanks." She leaned over, kissed my forehead, and walked into the bathroom. A minute later, the shower started. I sat there in the quiet, letting the sound of running water fill the silence in my head. The next day, I began assembling it all into something solid. A report, a timeline, dates, locations, visual proof. I printed **TS and labeled each one. Photos, confirmation numbers, her texts about team dinners laid beside the hotel reservations from those nights. A spreadsheet showing ATM withdrawals and the corresponding charges at restaurants I'd never been to. There were no holes, no deniability. She hadn't left a crack. She'd left an open door, and I'd walked through it. But here's the part that surprised me. I didn't feel like confronting her yet. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't done watching. There was something about the way she floated through the house, unaware that her secrets had become mine, that gave me a strange sort of peace. I knew. She didn't know I knew. It made every conversation sharper, every lie clearer, like watching a magician perform a trick you already figured out. She started talking about moving, said the city was getting too expensive, that maybe we should downsize, save money, be more intentional. She suggested Portland, closer to clients, she said. And you've always loved the trees. I nodded. You're right, I said. She lit up, told me she'd start checking listings, that maybe we could make a weekend trip out of it. I almost laughed. She wasn't inviting me to Portland. She was trying to move her lives closer together, merge them. That night, she asked if I wanted to go away together. Just us, she said. We haven't done that in ages. I told her yes. And then I went into the guest room and added the conversation to my log. I was done reacting. Now I was building. Not a case. Not really. Not anymore. I was building an exit. I scheduled a second meeting with the lawyer. Sent over the files. Explained what I had. Explained what I wanted. A clean break. No mess. No theatrics. I don't want to destroy her, I said. I just want to leave clean. The lawyer understood. She'd seen this before. She asked if I was sure. I said yes. She asked if Mia would be surprised. No, I said. She'll be shocked, but not surprised. In the evenings, Mia still tried. She made dinner twice that week, actual effort. Roasted vegetables. A risotto she hadn't made in years. She wore that soft, hopeful expression I used to love. She touched my hand at the table, said things like, I feel like we're reconnecting. And I said, me too, but I was already gone. The person sitting across from her was just someone finishing the scene, closing the loop, tying the bow. And in the drawer beside me was everything I needed. The evidence. the truth, and soon the exit. Mia suddenly became the perfect wife. Dinners, soft kisses, weekend plans. But I knew it was an act. I played along, silent, collecting every message, receipt, and lie. I opened a separate bank account, met with a lawyer, shifted our finances piece by piece. While she rehearsed her role, I built my exit. Every smile she gave me became another reason to leave with precision, not emotion. A video from the corporate party arrived. Mia and Brian kissing behind a column, hands roaming like no one was watching. Combined with the porch footage, receipts, and messages, it was all airtight. I didn't need her confession. I had certainty. She was building a life with him. I was building my freedom. At breakfast, she still smiled. I smiled back, but everything inside me was already gone. The decision wasn't angry. It was final.